Hi, how's it going? This is Stephen Ybarra's brief overview of GAM475, my Milestone engine with all my graphics and stuff. So, basically the way this is going to work, I'm going to just run the demo real quick, point out a few things, go through the code, and then run it one more time, just so you kind of have a bit of a new perspective after seeing some of my code. So here we go. So after running my initial test video, it looks a lot rougher around the edges on the playback video than it does actually running on my screen. But essentially what you see here is we have a whole grid of 4 separate objects. So let me jump to the middle here. So we have cross shapes, we have diamonds, we have pyramids, and then we have little cubes. Each shape or each model is independent of one another as far as its texture goes, and also its behavior. So you can see that each model, even the ones of the same primitive types, are behaving differently from one another, which is pretty nice. We also have different shaders here, so you zoom in here, we have the wireframe, we have the multicolored, we have the flat texture, but we also have the point light texture. We also have different transformations as far as the elongated, if you look down here, the elongated wireframe models. We also have some shrunken models, so if we zoom in here, you can see that we have our tiny little, oops, I lost him, our tiny little cross. Yeah, as far as camera angles go, that is one of the major weaknesses of my Milestone. I could not get the multiple camera system working. I have kind of the foundation laid and classes created, but I just couldn't get it to work in time. But that being said, I do have a few hotkeys that allow me to jump around to different focal points. So that's that. The only other giant major outward facing issue that's missing is the ability to hot swap textures on the same model during runtime. That is something I also kind of laid the foundation for, but couldn't quite get working in time. So let's dig through the code. So right here we have our abstract game. Oh, actually, no, that's not what I want. Let's start right here with game. So what I plan on doing in the future is abstracting all of this out and putting it into various managers, and having those managers kind of run the same functions as the game. So load content, initialize, update, and draw. Those are kind of the main 4 methods I plan on implementing in the future. That way it'll really declutter the primary game class here. So as we go through, we load up our models. So we have our 4 models here that we read out of a file. We have a cube model, pyramid model, diamond model, and cross model. Those are essentially the same as our last drop of cube model, where we went through and all the vertex data and the VBOs, we wrote them to a binary file, .azul file, and then once we were happy with the way things were set up, totally cleaned things out. The only thing I did not do, however, is I did not totally delete all the vertex data in case I wanted to go back and make any changes to it in the future. But here we are. So take a look at cross model. So I did leave it in, but I did leave these defines in the way to dictate whether or not we're going to read or write to a file. I still want to play around with the UV values and also the normal values on the vertex data. That way I can really get that shading and lighting down over break. Let's see what else. We load up our shader objects. We have several shaders here. Our color, that's the multicolor render or texture render, the texture point light, and then also 3 shaders, one of which we were showing in class, the green. I just basically copied and pasted the green, changed the RGB values to blue and red. So that was pretty fun. We have our 4 textures here: rock, stone, red brick, duckweed. Over break, I'm going to kind of prioritize finding a few more textures. Graphic objects. Again, we have wireframe, flat texture, texture light, our green, blue, and red, and then also our multicolored. I need to rename color by position. That's stupid. I need to change that to multicolored. Let's see here. So we have some forward declares. This is where things start to get a little bit sloppy, especially with having the game objects dictate their own behavior. I needed a way to reference the projection world matrix inside of each game object. So I had to make a outward pointer to that to kind of follow the pattern here we have of just updating all the pointers. As we go through, these are all of our cube models. I arranged each of the 4 primitive types into that sort of 4x9 grid. It's pretty easy to manage that way. I also made this constant, this demo object spacing there. Each object spaced 10 units apart from one another. So that made things nice and even as well. And if I wanted to go change that, I just go up to the top of game, change the values, and all the spacing will be equal from one another. As we go through, now here is kind of the change up, or one of the major change ups from one of the last drops. So I basically used a strategy pattern to allow each game object to control its own state, or sorry, not state, technically state, yeah, but its own behavior upon instantiation. I still am planning on cleaning this up a bit more, but for now I was pretty proud of this one. So let's take a look inside of that, because that was one of the bigger hurdles we had to get over. So in the future I want to get orbit behavior working where an object can orbit around another object, but for now I was pretty happy with spin object. So we have our abstract game object behavior class. It just has pure virtual functions, and then each of our behaviors inherit from that. So spin game object behavior, I have 5 basic spin behaviors or spin patterns, and then we have all of our overrides and our big 4 we just kind of got rid of. And then we look at the actual implementation. We have the update override. It just goes through and checks what the spin direction is, implements certain transformations based on that. I basically just rip these out of either the last drop of game object where it causes spinning, or I kind of modified the initial drop behavior that was included with the original Spinny Cube demo, and then changed some of the values on there. I also pass in this p-trains from game object. Again, that's just another way to make sure that the object stays in its proper position while it's being updated during its behavior changes. So we go through, I just kind of mixed it up. There wasn't really any rhyme or reason as far as the behaviors I added. Again, I only added the spin object behavior, but within the spin object behavior, there's a little bit of, not like forthing and spinnings, but some of the objects kind of spin around in a circle. And I'll take a look at that and point that out again towards the end here. How are we doing with time? Okay, I got a couple minutes. Yeah, so like I said, I want to put this all in Game Object Manager and have it just load up, really clean up this area. This guy was where I wanted to do my swap texture model demo. Wasn't working out very well. I put the swap texture method, or at least my ghetto crappy version, inside of Game Object, and I could not get it to work, so I kind of just decided to plow forward and deal with that one a little bit later once I had a little bit more downtime. But I think I was kind of close to at least getting a prototype of that working. So game update, this just updates the camera again. I could not get the camera manager working. I ran into the alignment issues due to the world matrix of the camera, so I couldn't get that working. I also have at least the baseline prototype classes working for that, so it's just a matter of tweaking, and then I should be able to get that going. Pretty straightforward. Also have the inputs here. Need to update. Yeah, I need to update the input manager to deal with bouncing keys, and also just kind of pull all this stuff out of here and put it into like an input manager load content. Same thing with updates too. So that's on my to-do list here. As we go through, I need to add more destructor methods. Same thing with my managers. Any nodes that are left over at the unload content, that's where I'd go through and kind of destroy things. Oh, and here's also where I changed the world background to white. I wanted it to look kind of like the Matrix because we're dealing with a lot of matrices here. So essentially that's it. You can take a look at my code. A lot of it looks fairly similar to the last drops. I was pretty proud of this strategy pattern here, where I got the spin object moving. I want to get the orbit working next. I noticed that the orbit, to get that to work, it's going to look very similar to the logic we have inside of our camera orbiting, with just a couple tweaks. So looking forward to getting that going. I'll run the demo one more time. So yeah, like I said, you can kind of notice that some of the objects are kind of already starting to do the orbit. Again, that was from the initial demo spinny cube. I don't like the way that they're doing their math. It seems like a really inefficient way to do it. So I'm going to look for a little bit of a better way using that camera logic. Other than that, that's essentially it. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed making this. I'm looking forward to having a little bit of a break and a little bit of a downtime to doing a lot more exploring with some of these graphics and hopefully optimizing this thing, because my laptop is pretty hot and the fans are blowing right now. So thank you for watching. Enjoy. Happy holidays.